This week, the American guidebook that may have helped save lives.
It took a lot of courage for a black family to get in their car and just hit the open road.
Lighting up Jordan's most treasured monument and dressing up in a Polish castle.
If you have misplaced your ties, I'm sure Mr. Derbyshire can be of assistance, so you can look more fun.
We're starting this week in the United States of America. Nowadays, a largely safe place to visit, no matter who you are or what you look like. 80 years ago, though, traveling around some parts of the country could be a dangerous prospect if you were African American. But help was on hand from one very special guidebook.
Traveling on the road if you were black during this time, you were taking your life in your hands. We estimate that there were over 10,000 sundown towns. Sundown towns were all white towns. They could have a sign at the border saying they would run out all of the black people. It took a lot of courage for a black family to get in their car and just hit the open road, you know, which is something I think in America we take for granted.
They call them Jim Crow laws, and those laws made it illegal for people of color to eat in restaurants, to stay in hotels, to use bathrooms. They had separate bathrooms. Some places you couldn't walk on the sidewalk with a white person. You had to get off the sidewalk and walk in the street.
The Green Book was a historic travel guide that was published for black people during the Jim Crow era. It was more than just gas, food, and lodging. There was everything from anything you might need on the road, whether it was like a doctor or churches or department stores, haberdashers, tailors, drugstores, there were golf courses. Disneyland was listed in the Green Book. You know, it was a pretty major guide. By the 1960s, we estimate it had been sold to over 2 million people.
My mother's from Kansas, my father's from North Carolina, so we travel mainly back and forth to those places. My parents would use the Green Book to plan places where we might stop. Without it, it would have been far more difficult, if not practically impossible. Because you can pack, people used to pack food, but for us to get to Kansas, we have to pack food that's gonna last us for 2 or 3 days. Where are you gonna stay?
My grandmother owned the only hotel in Charlottesville, Virginia that black people could stay in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. The Green Book listing was very important to the business because people traveling through the South, and even in places in the North, really relied on that book to figure out where they were going to stop. The inn was just a fantastic, vibrant place filled with relatives and people that I'd never met. Because the University of Virginia is located in Charlottesville, many entertainers, famous entertainers and figures would come to the university. And if they were African American, they had to stay at my grandmother's place. One of the things that I am very proud of is this picture of of Louis Armstrong that he autographed to my grandmother. It's an artifact in our family that I hope will be passed down from generation to generation. It was a great moment, but in the early 60s, when desegregation began, the business started to fail. My grandmother was getting older and was not as well. She had some health problems. But most people, when they had a choice of staying in the Holiday Inn down the street or the Motel 6 or whatever, decided they'd rather stay there. You know, it was modern, it was different. And for many black people, it was a point of pride to be able to go where they had been denied access before. It closed in 1967 or so when my grandmother got ill. It doesn't exist anymore. It's sad. I don't think it would have been able to have been sustained. We've made progress, but we lose something when we make progress.
Well, I stumbled on the Green Book by accident. I was writing a book on Route 66 and found it was at a Route 66 exhibit, and there was a Green Book like under glass and tucked away in a corner. When I first put my hands on a Green Book, it was magical. It's this feeling of like you too can enjoy America. It was a very hopeful, positive guide. Well, I'm in New York because I am a scholar in residence at the Schoenberg Center for Black Research, and it's amazing because they have the largest collection of Green Books in the world. And I've scouted about 1,600 Green Book sites so far. And of those, less than a quarter are still standing. But I'm also working with city planners to have them recognize these sites as culturally significant and historic sites. The Green Book was an innovative and resourceful solution to a horrific problem.
For me, it's a source of pride that African Americans, that black people were resilient. They were resourceful. I think our ancestors would be proud of the Green Book, that we survived and that we came up with these tools.
They had a lot of courage, a lot of drive, and we're not going to be denied. I think that those lessons should be a comfort to people facing today's America.
Next up, we're in Petra in Jordan, meeting the man who guides tourists in the ancient city after dark.
In Petra by night, I am a guide. Petra by night, we started to do this program 17 years ago in order to give chance for our visitors to see Petra during the night, to enjoy the atmosphere of the candles, the nature. And we start from the main gate there, about 2 kilometers through the sea, and we light more than 1,500 candles. Soon they arrived here. We start the show. We have 2 Jordanian instruments, ancient instruments. The first one we call it shababa, the flute. The other one we call it rababa. Last night you hear when he sang about the Bedouin. You know, Bedouin live in the tents, in the caves, breed the horses, the goats, raise the camels in the desert. before the Arab Spring, before the problems, many tourists. I remember 1,000 in Christmas time. But after, since 5 years, 6 years, slow down. Sometimes 30, 70, not many tourists. I'll give you free time to enjoy the atmosphere of the candles, take pictures. The best thing for me, when the tourists sit together, friendly, I tell them to keep their camera ready to take photo together. 1, 2, 3. It means we are one heart, one eye, one tongue. When I come every night, it's like a dream. I like it. It's honor for me to guide from all the countries, different nationality, to make them happy, to see Petra.
Still to come. I'm role-playing in Poland and trying to get some answers out of this naughty baron.
Where were you last night? I've had reports that they saw you quite late in the evening with a mysterious young lady.
Mysterious?
The Travel Show, your central guide wherever you're headed.
Next this week, my travels take me to a part of Poland that's well off the beaten track. This is Lower Silesia, about an hour and a half's drive from the regional capital Wrocław, and not far from the Czech border.
What a beautiful place. Marshner Zamek. Been here a long while, but absolutely stunning. Really sets the scene for, I think, what I'm going to be in for the next couple of days.
I've come to this Gothic palace to take part in a live-action roleplay, or LARP. For the next 3 days, this is not Mosna Castle, but Fairweather Manor, an English country house. The year is 1917, right in the middle of the First World War.
This is the costume room. Buongiorno.
This man is the brains behind it all. What is LARP?
Have you ever played house as a kid, Henry?
Yes.
You played the father who was angry and scolding his children because they didn't do their homework, or maybe you played one of the kids not doing the homework and wanting to play soccer instead. This is that, just with more complex stories, better costumes, and hopefully a little bit more interesting locations. It's pretend play for adults.
LARPing grew out of the Dungeons & Dragons scene in the 1980s. As some of its players got older, their ambition grew. And these days, some events can attract huge crowds. In Germany, for instance, 7,500 people played this, the most recent game of Conquest. Its organizers claim it's the world's biggest LARP. Klaus creates elaborate games mainly in Poland and Denmark. People have traveled from as far afield as the US and Canada for this. Tickets start at £330 or $420, including food and accommodation.
So I need some tips, because obviously I'm going to be diving headfirst into this.
I'd say some of it is character portrayal. I mean, you want to be believable as what you are, first off. But then second, you want it also to be interesting. It's pretty easy to be a believable old grumpy guy sitting in the corner not talking to anybody. It's also boring. It's boring for you, it's boring for anyone else.
The fat people over here.
The night before the action begins, we're all given the rules of the house. A few ballroom dancing lessons.
Europe is burning.
And then the somber opening speech is delivered in character, or in-game as the LARPers put it.
Went up in flames. All over Europe, brother fights brother. The stage is set. Welcome to Fairweather Manor.
So this is the morning of the LARP, and I have my outfit for my character. I have my character details here. My name is Robert Abbott. I'm a former war correspondent, a journalist, and I've seen all the atrocities that have been happening on the front line. You are short-tempered. You weren't always this way, but the war has changed you, and not entirely for the better. Your sense of being lost in a world that no longer makes sense and a job that seems insufficient to the task given to you leads you to easily become frustrated and lash out at the people around you. You've met too many people who simply don't want to see the truth that's in front of them, and their willful ignorance infuriates you.
The first challenge is to actually find the other guests.
I think we're a bit late for breakfast. Am I the only person in the castle? Huh. Okay, nobody. I don't think I've kind of gotten into it as of yet. How is the kind of the easing into it? Is it you just have to jump in, or?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is it safe to say that it's all in game right now?
You must believe that everything is in game, and if it's not, then you would know in some way. Then people would do something. Okay. I hope so.
Because these ladies here, the one on the right is crying, and I want to kind of go.
Yes, exactly.
Are you okay?
That's the.
But you shouldn't.
No.
Unless you're in character.
Yes, of course. If you want to do something about it in game, then of course it's all right. But yeah, it is a trap.
I do want to kind of feel that, but I'm quite conscious because I've got these guys following me.
Oh yes.
All of a sudden, I'm handed a lifeline, a mission, in the form of a little scandal.
So it seems like one of the young maids were spotted alone in the forest with one of the German nobles.
Yeah.
Ruffled hair and everything.
And in a state of undress?
I wouldn't quite say so, but I'm sure it wasn't far away.
Not all the characters are welcoming me with open arms.
Robert from the Sunday Times.
Nice to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
I didn't want to bother you earlier, but if you have misplaced your ties, I'm sure Mr. Derbyshire can be of assistance, so you can look proper just for the rest of the day.
Will do so. Thank you very much. I am but a mere journalist.
Yes, I didn't like to say.
Now, from my impressions, this could be perceived as very geeky and a little kind of weird.
Somebody that sits there and knows every single football stat of every single player ever, yeah, would also be considered a little bit geeky. It is no different, you know. For this particular type of LARP, a lot of research has gone into the time period, the costumes, everything.
If you have a hobby where there's a real passion involved, it doesn't matter whether it's a sport, it doesn't matter whether it's something that's more indoors or intellectual or something like this. I think the people involved have an aspect of geekiness to them because that passion drives them to be very focused.
Excuse me, ladies. Yes? Can I have a moment of your time?
I feel like it's down to me to expose this shady Baron for what he is. And slowly and surely, I actually begin to have fun.
I heard something about a rumor and a maid. A Baron and a maid out in the forest. I don't know which maid. It's probably for the best that I don't know which maid.
And do you know which Baron everybody seems to be getting a different name.
The German Baron, I don't know.
The German Baron, right, yeah. Where were you last night? I've had reports that they saw you quite late in the evening with a mysterious young lady.
Mysterious?
That is what they say.
Here's nothing mysterious. It's the lady and we talking about family relations.
Okay.
Yes, so and we talk about the war.
Right.
I can't get anything out of the Baron himself, so my only other route is to head down to the servants' quarters to find his mistress. But I find my way barred.
Well, I find even the bad question preposterous, to be perfectly honest.
For us, it's just getting down to the bottom of...
Naturally, I understand you're only doing your job. No offense taken. To even believe that they would be true, I think is playing into the hand of the rumor mongers.
LARPs are still usually high fantasy events with wizards and elves and the like, but Fairweather Manor is billed as an emotional LARP. Players here want to be moved.
I think to me, when I design LARPs, I aim to give people an emotional journey. I hate when you're like, you know, you just get talking heads and like, yes, some more tea for you, but I wanted to feel something. So that's what I try to design for. And then, of course, having a war, death, that's like, it might not be the subtle things as a LARP designer, but it's a big brush and then you can make people feel. So love and war, basically, it's about, and changes in society.
Still pondering my next move, I get dressed for dinner.
And the actor was heard shouting, "No, Alexander, I am not your man."
The nuggets of gossip I've been given delight my dinner mates.
I would not lie.
But little do I know, there's a plan in store for me.
Okay, so what we have here is a telegram, which will be sent in the game to be delivered to Robert Abbott at 7:30 p.m. And what this telegram says is, to Robert Abbott, Robert, your correspondence accreditation has been revoked by the War Office. We did everything we could, but they wouldn't budge.
Sorry. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, you won't be going back to the front. Come back to London, we'll sort out what comes next.
This is preposterous! I came here with integrity of journalism and you throw it in my face, all of you! It is not my fault that the Baron can't keep his hands off women! A servant nonetheless! So away with your press pass, away with your nobility.
And I still don't know if the Baron was telling me the truth. But anyway.
Next time, there's a chance to catch up with some of our best trips from the past year. We went to more than 70 countries in 2016, did everything from ninja training in Japan to penguin spotting in Australia to attempting one of India's most traditional dances.
Don't forget you can join us on all of our travels wherever we are in the world by signing on to our social media feeds.
And if you want to see what it was like behind the scenes on this week's LARPing adventure, check out our website, bbc.com/travel show.
But for me, Henry Golding, and the rest of the Travel Show team here in Lower Silesia in Poland, it's goodbye.